because you have some trash. Ideas that you come up with over the years or that people have told you that's not true, and it prevents you from telling stories. So I say, now we're going to take out your head trash. And the first one is, stories are bragging. If I tell a story about myself that makes me look good, then people will think I'm all full of myself. That sound familiar? Yeah, I don't want to look like a braggart. So when I told you the Fred story, did you think I was bragging?
No.
No. You tell people a good story, they learn about you. And when I told you the Fred story, I did not do a particularly good job with Fred, for starters, right? Because I was standing there telling him what to do. And frankly, I got lucky. I got lucky things ended as well as they did. So it wasn't me bragging, it was me telling you the truth. And you learned more about me in that way. So when you have an accomplishment, or when well actually, what's going on here is that you are telling stories to connect with people. You can brag all you want to your family and friends, because they'll put up with that stuff. The rest of us, not so much. But the idea of storytelling is to tell a story to help you get to your goal. If you want to build a relationship with somebody, what's a good story to tell that's going to overcome a barrier that you face in creating a good relationship with them? And it's usually not a story that talks about how great you are. It's a story that talks about a problem that they have that you've solved for other people. Early on in my career, I did a lot of writing of websites. And there's a line I've used that applies here too, which is, nobody comes to your website to learn about you. They come to see themselves. And if you can show somebody that you have solved a problem that they have, because you already know people run away from pain faster than they run toward features and benefits. So if you can show them you have solved a problem they have, you reduce with you, and shorten the amount of time it takes for them to reach out. People don't listen to your stories innately because they want to know more about you. They want to, we all get involved in problems and problem solving and learning how other people are doing this stuff. So telling a story is not about bragging. It's about you choose stories, and we'll get into this a little bit later, you'll choose stories that advance you toward the goal, whatever that goal is. It's not about making you look good. It's about creating a connection. And if we told stories that bragged, then we wouldn't be making a good connection. So stories are not about bragging. Let that one go. Next one, you have to memorize your story. Okay, because there are lots of, I need to memorize, and say it the same way every time. Gosh, no. That will bore the crap out of all of us. The Fred story, I tell it differently every time. As a matter of fact, this time I forgot to give you my favorite line about the Fred story, which is the one I usually share at the end. And that is, my experience with Fred has become the litmus test for me. As long as nobody pulls a machete on me, I'm having a good day. So obviously I didn't memorize the Fred story. But here's the truth. When you memorize things, a lot of times what will happen is that somebody will ask you a question, or there will be a noise in the background that will loosen up your concentration. And you'll get stuck in your tracks. And you won't know where to go. So memorization does not help. And also, if you memorize a story, then you're telling it the same way to everybody. And every audience should have a story told differently to them, to tailor to them. Just remember what the major points are and get those in there. Oh, and by the way, how many of you, so it's neuroscience again, how many of you have ever had to stand up and give a presentation and you have reached a point where you have lost 50 points of IQ and you cannot for the life of you remember the next thing you're going to say? Raise your hand if it's ever happened to you. Yeah, okay. Here's what you do. Here's what's going on. You are literally frozen, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. You've ended up in freeze in that moment. I don't know what to say next. What you do is you move. Anyway, move your body anyway. Forward, back, side to side, whatever. Because in that moment, your body is frozen. But as it at least frees up the energy in your body and your brain so that you can riff a little bit until you remember what it is that you were going to say next. So if you ever don't know what you're going to say next because you memorized your presentation and it did not go well, move around. And people say, Lynn, you move around all the time. You bet. Helps me remember stuff. All right, so don't memorize your story. All you need is one good story. You have friends who have that one joke they're known for. And all they have is that one joke. If there's one really good story, okay. But you need to tailor it to different people, the way we've already talked about. And one story cannot address everything. Because you will tell different stories for different reasons. You'll tell different stories to reach different goals. One story can't do it, can't do everything. Which is why we're going to start investigating what are different types of stories we can tell. And I call it strategic storytelling because most often what we do is we tell stories because we want people to like us, to commiserate with us, to dislike somebody that we dislike, all of those reasons. And that stuff is fine for you and your family and friends, but when it comes to work, You want to tell stories for a reason that help get you closer to the goal that you set for having this conversation, or doing this meeting, or reaching this goal, whatever it is. Stories become a way for you to get there, as opposed to just a moment of levity. Although there may be times when you tell a quick funny story because you can feel the atmosphere in the room is sinking lowly. And you need to lighten people up. Okay, so let me tell you a story about once that happened to me. I was speaking at a storytelling conference, and I had the coveted 3 o'clock in the afternoon spot. I was the last program of the day, and the person who was there before me was not a professional speaker, and she had sucked the life out of the room. It was gone. Nobody was giving me eye contact. And so I said to everybody, okay, everybody stand up. So all you guys stand up. I said, everybody stand up. I said, okay, so now what I want you to do is go, do it. Okay, do it again. Okay, sit down. It's amazing what you can get people to do when you stand in front of the room. But sometimes you need to change the energy in the room. And by the way, so more neuroscience for you. How many of you give group presentations of one sort or another? A good number of you. Remember this. Second rule earlier, this is the 7-minute rule. And the 7-minute rule is that people cannot sit and listen to a talking head for more than 7 minutes without taking a brain vacation. So every 7 minutes you need to do something that gets people back in the room. The jargon for it is you need to create a state change. You need to change the level of energy in the room. And you can do it by having people go or raise their hands or ask you questions or a number of different things. So as you plan your presentations, know that about your group. And you'll notice that we do a lot of interactive stuff, right? That's so that you get to keep everybody with you. So just another neuroscience sidelight. You need to use a story that works in the environment that you're in. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the different types of stories you can tell and why you would tell one story versus another. And the first type of story is, by the way, these different types of stories, they come to us from a woman whose name is Annette Simmons, who wrote a book called Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins. Do not read this book, it's terrible. Her ideas are wonderful, her book is terrible. So let me give you the good stuff. Who I am story. The reason you tell a who I am story is that you want to show people that you're human and authentic. And you do that by sharing a flaw with them, something that you did not do well. The Fred story is a who I am story. I didn't do a good job with Fred. I was just telling him what to do until he demanded my attention and I had to change. So when you want to let people know, because I stand up here, I'm wearing this nice dress. You might have thought, well, she's had an easy life. She never had to, deal with the annoying people who come into, my office every day. No. Now you know. I was a screw up. And I got lucky. This makes me human. So when you want to create connection, feel free to share one of the stories that, you didn't do a great job, but you learned something from it, which shows that you can face adversity and you can make something good happen. So that's your goal with the Who I Am story, to show that you're human and approachable. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions on any of the stuff, please ask. None of this hold your questions till the end stuff. This is you and me working together on stuff to make your life easier. And all of us having fun. So any questions on the Who I Am story? Please.
Could it be a story about a tragedy or something bad in your life?
It can be a story about a tragedy or something difficult in your life. There are many speakers who make an excellent living talking about they got to the point when they were living in their, in the van down by the river, and what they did to turn their lives around. That's a Who I Am story. So if you faced adversity, and you get the impression that somebody thinks, oh, you've just been sailing through your life and everything's easy for you, tell them a Who I Am story, to show that you're human and approachable. And once again, your brain is a pattern-seeking organ. So your brain is always looking for patterns for things. Because, I hate to tell you this, but you already know it, your brain is lazy. If you don't have to think about something, you will not. And if you're standing in front of somebody who looks an awful lot like your friend Rebecca from 8th grade, whom you really didn't like, you are really willing to dislike this person because she looks like your friend Rebecca from 8th grade. What your brain does is it takes a situation and it fills in the gaps. And this woman may be nothing like Rebecca from 8th grade, but she looks like her, or maybe she sounds like her, so your brain has already jumped to, oh yeah, so she's gonna run off with my boyfriend just the way Rebecca did back in 8th grade. Your brain doesn't want to work hard all the time, so it's looking for patterns so that it doesn't have to think hard. The same is happening with everybody that you're interacting with. So you tell people a Who I Am story to show them that you're not perfect and you don't think you're perfect. And you're right, to talk about adversity, something bad that happened to you, and how you overcame it, yeah, that lets people know you're not perfect and you've had your struggles. And this is what you've got from them. So good, thank you. Any other questions about Who I Am stories? Because once again, the goal is to show that you're human. And help combat some of the, because once again, you stand in front of people, or you sit in front of people, and their brains are making judgments about you all the time, and they're filling in the blanks. Make sure that you fill in more of the blanks with the stuff that's true than the stuff that they're imagining. Because how many times have you been with a friend or a loved one and they totally misinterpret something that you've just done? And you think, how in the heck did they ever get to that? Yep. And the answer is, because their brain's filling in the gaps. It becomes our job to make sure that they fill in the gaps with the truth rather than what they've imagined. And a Who I Am story does that. The next is a Why I'm Here story. So for Why I'm Here stories, your goal for these is to show that you want to work with people and you do not have a hidden agenda. You want to work with people, you don't have a hidden agenda. So for example, a Why I'm Here story, I was asked to speak to a class of high school seniors at the Chicago Math and Science Academy. And they were having a resume writing night. And so, can you tell a story, and can you do a 15-minute keynote on the power of resume? And I thought, I'm already asleep. The power of resume. And I thought, okay, so how do because I'm going to stand up in front of this group and they're going to think I'm some old bag who is going to bore them for the next 15 minutes, and then they're going to have to spend the rest of the evening doing something they hate. Okay. So I said to them, if you're here, any of the adults who are here to support you in writing resumes tonight, how they feel about writing their own resume, if they would look like a cat hawking up a fur ball. None of us want to write our resumes. Particularly for you as a young person, there's no way for you to get a job without one. So how can we reframe this into something we want to do that will get us the job we want to have? So let's take a different look at it. And I asked them, shout out the names of your favorite superhero. And I got Batman and Spider-Man and Wonder Woman and Black Panther and all kinds. And I said, great. All good answers. Even better answer would be you. That you are your favorite superhero. Because the truth is, there's at least one thing you do that you do better than anybody else that you know of in your family or your friends or any of this stuff. And that's really your superpower. And some company would be awfully lucky to have you doing that superpower for them. So think of your resume as a one-page graphic novel where you get to tell stories about your superpower. So I wasn't this old bag. I was somebody who was having them take a different look at writing resumes. And people actually went off to write their resumes much more excited than they had been before. So the Why I'm Here story is, no, I'm not here to bore you with the power of resume. I'm here to help you with a way to actually do a resume that's going to get you what you want. When you tell a Why I'm Here story, it's to show people that you don't have a hidden agenda, that you are actually here to work with them. So that's a Why I'm Here story. Any questions on that? Feel free to ask questions about this story or any of the other types of stories that we're talking about. A teaching story. So the purpose of a teaching story is to share a lesson in a memorable way. And probably one of the most famous ones of these, how many of you remember from your childhood the Boy Who Cried Wolf story? Yes. So it's this teenager sitting on the side of the hill with the sheep. And now we know that people's brains do not mature until they're 25. So teenage boys and teenage girls do lots of stupid stuff. And in this instance, the stupid stuff was, oh, I'm bored. Let's run down to the village and tell them that there's a wolf. So everybody comes up here. So that's what he did, and they all came up, and and there was no wolf, and they walked down to the village grumbling, and the kid is laughing his head off. And because he's a teenage boy, he does it again. And gets them up there, and there's no wolf, and then they really start grumbling. And of course, third time being a charm, the wolf shows up, he runs down to the village, nobody follows him. And we tell our kids this story to remind them that when you lie to me, I can't keep you safe because I don't know when to believe you. And how powerful is that story that we all still remember it, some of us decades later. So if you can share in a memorable way, that's what a teaching story does. Some lesson that you want people to remember wrapped in a story. Make sense? Okay, I will keep going unless there are more questions. And please, love questions. All right, Then there's a vision